Hi everyone, I'm Ellie. Today I'm going to share my story with you. It's not easy to talk about my weaknesses, but I have no immunity at all. My mom says it hasn't developed in me since I was born. Doctors put me in an oxygen chamber as soon as I was born to keep the germs away, so I spent my whole childhood and teenage years locked up. I would stand by the window and look at the happy kids my age. They were chatting, laughing, enjoying life. A couple of them were even holding hands. I envied them, for I had never left the walls of my house. I have to say that our whole house was sterile. We wouldn't even open the windows so no germs could get in and not to harm my defenseless body. Every person coming in from the street had to go through a disinfecting box. 4 nozzles located on the walls shot out a disinfectant mixture. That way, the clothes, shoes, and things the person brought with them became absolutely sterile. One evening, I greeted my mother from work. After she was treated, I could already hug her. I grabbed the bags and dragged them into the kitchen. Mom and I sat at the table, just in time for the disinfectant booth to start humming again. My older sister Chelsea and my dad were standing in it. A few minutes later, we were all sitting around the table eating dinner. Chelsea suddenly laughed. "What's wrong with you?" I asked. "I remember a kid burping out the alphabet at the talent show today." The whole audience laughed so hard. "That's great. What was your act?" "Me? In the talent show? Pfft, no way." I would have recited my poems. I imagined going on stage in a beautiful dress, opening my diary, and sharing my most personal poems with the audience. My mother saw that I was completely lost in my fantasy world and abruptly interrupted our conversation. "No talking at the table." For some reason, my mother did not want me to know what was happening outside of our home. I went to my room. I tried to go to sleep, but I couldn't. So I came out of my bedroom, and through the crack of the door, I looked into Chelsea's room. My sister noticed me and opened the door. "Come in already." I went inside and got a little shy. "Can you tell me more stories about school?" "Of course." Chelsea and I talked for like an hour. I was always jealous of her. She was only a year older than me, but she could live life to the fullest. Suddenly, there was a dim glow from the headlights in the windows. I knew who it was. John, Chelsea's boyfriend. "I'll go out the window, but it better be our secret." "Okay." "How did you even open the window?" "Just push the button." I walked out of the room and I heard the window slam. I pressed the quartz button. My parents installed special lights in every room to help keep the germs that were dangerous to me out. I went back to my room and was about to go to bed, but I noticed a figure in the window across the street. When I got closer, I saw a guy my age. He was dancing in his room. I couldn't hear the music, which made his antics look even funnier. The guy stopped and quickly turned his head in my direction. I ducked under the windowsill, hoping he didn't see me. After catching my breath, I lay down on the bed, but a few seconds later, I heard a small pebble hit the glass. It must have been the neighbor. He came to tell me what he thought of my spying skills. And indeed, in the window across the street, I saw the same guy again. He was smiling and waving at me. Oh no, he did see me. The guy opened the window and started saying something, but I gestured that I couldn't hear him. He thought about it, and then he walked away somewhere, but he quickly returned with a blackboard and a marker in his hands. The board had Alex written on it. He pointed his finger at me. I quickly glanced around the room. I managed to find a couple of sheets and a marker. I wrote Ellie. Alex smiled, so with the help of the signs, we communicated for a few days. One evening, Alex showed up at the window with a very puzzled look on his face. He hesitantly stroked the marker across the sign. Then he turned it toward me. He wrote, "Shall we go for a walk?" I replied that I couldn't. And I wrote, "I'm sick. You should come visit me." The guy smiled and nodded. During dinner, I sat at the table, picking vegetables on my plate. Everyone noticed that something was wrong with me. "Is everything okay, sweetheart?" Daddy asked. "Daddy, can I invite guests into the house?" "Of course." But before he could finish, Mom interrupted him. "And who is this guest?" It's Alex, the guy from next door." "No way, honey. He'll bring germs. We can't take any chances." "But Mom, he'll go through the disinfectant box just like you." "We don't know who he is or what diseases he has." I was enraged and slammed my fist on the table. The vegetables on my plate jumped up. This is ridiculous. Can't I have friends? We are your friends. I cried because of such a cruel injustice. I left the table and went to my room. Once in my room, I let my tears flow. There was a knock, and my sister came into the room. She sat down next to me. It's not fair, sis. If you need help, just tell me. An idea popped into my head out of the blue. I need your window. What? It's risky. If Mom and Dad find out, we won't tell them anything. Chelsea thought about it and nodded. But under one condition, I'm worried about your health, so we'll protect you properly. I was surprised, but my sister winked at me and smiled. You'll see, it's going to be awesome. A little while later, I saw Alex in the window. I showed him my sign. It read, "Follow my instructions." He thought it was some kind of game and agreed. Alex climbed through the window in my sister's room. As soon as the window slammed shut, Chelsea hit the sanitation button, so Alex had to wait a few more minutes. After the necessary procedure, Chelsea showed him the door to my room. When Alex saw me, he opened his mouth in surprise. It wasn't because of my divine beauty. I was standing in the middle of the room wearing a yellow protective suit, and my face was covered with a protective mask. Alex laughed. Are you having a costume party? I forgot my costume. Sit down, you jokester. There's something I need to tell you. At first, Alex didn't take my story seriously, but the more I talked, the sadder his eyes got. And you've been in this house your whole life? Yeah. I know another girl with the same story. What's her name? Rapunzel. Alex and I laughed. He managed to change the tone of the conversation to something more cheerful. We chatted until the break of dawn. Finally, the guy got up and headed for the exit. I don't know how it happened, but I suddenly grabbed his arm. Alex turned around, looked into my eyes, and then he put his arm around me. We stood like that for a few more minutes, then he left. I spent the whole day daydreaming about my new friend. He would come over at night, we would talk, and sometimes play board games. One night, the door to my room swung open. My mother was standing at the door, and the sight of her didn't promise anything good. Get away from my daughter! I'm sorry, ma'am. We were just talking. You could have killed her. She has no immunity. Mom grabbed Alex by the arm and started shaking him. Let him go. I stood up for my friend. Alex broke free. I've been here many times and nothing happened. You're just torturing your daughter. Dad came into the room. Unlike Mom, he was calm and just walked Alex out the door. Mom was furious. You're not going to see that boy again. You have no right. Believe me, it's for your own safety. My parents left and I heard the key turn in the keyhole. I ran up to the locked door and started pounding on it with my fists, sobbing helplessly. The next night, I kept waiting for Alex to show up at the window, but he wasn't there. He showed up much later and made himself known the old-fashioned way by throwing a pebble at the window. The guy pulled out his walkie-talkie, and I heard his voice. It was so great that Alex was able to give me a walkie-talkie beforehand. I got some bad news. After talking to your mom, my parents decided to move. Then, the connection was cut off. He pulled out a piece of paper, and after a little hesitation, he turned it toward me. The writing said, I love you. I wanted to write the same thing back, but someone turned on the sprinklers and they sprayed Alex with water. I heard my mom yelling at the guy. He gave me one last look and ran away. Mom made a big scene again. Why is she doing this to me? I spent the whole night wondering what I should do. I cannot live in this room for the rest of my life as Rapunzel in her tower. When morning came, I started looking out the window occasionally. Alex's parents were loading things into their car. Soon, Alex himself appeared near the car. He was very sad. He got in the backseat right away. I panicked, running around the room, desperate to do something. I ran to the door, pulled the knob. It was locked. The only way out was through a closed window. I hastily put on my hazmat suit and my mask. I yanked on the window, but it wouldn't budge. Alex's parents' car started. It was now or never. There was a metal chair in the corner of the room. I grabbed it and threw it through the window with all my might. The glass shattered into tiny shards, even through my suit. I felt the cool wind rush into the room. Someone started pounding furiously on the door. What are you doing? Mom yelled. At that moment, the car was already backing up. I carefully climbed out the window, but I heard a cracking noise. There was a big hole in my suit. It was no longer sealed, but I didn't care. I climbed out onto the roof of the house, and from there, I climbed to the roof of the garage and jumped to the ground. Mom showed up at the broken window. "Come back here immediately!" I didn't pay attention to what she said. Alex's car drove away, and I ran after it. I yelled out what I'd wanted to say for so long, but the mask on my face made me completely inaudible. So I took a desperate step. I took off my mask, I filled my lungs with air, and shouted, "Alex, I love you!" But hardly anyone heard me. I felt dizzy, and my legs couldn't hold me at all. I didn't even realize how I lost consciousness. I woke up from a strange sensation. Something had dripped on my face. When I opened my eyes, I saw that I was lying in Alex's arms, and tears were streaming down his cheeks. "You're alive!" Alex was happy. Yeah, I just inhaled a bit too much oxygen. I'm not used to it. Alex and I smiled shyly at each other. I looked around and saw my mom on the doorstep. She wanted to run up to us, but this time, my father wouldn't let her. Later, my parents explained to me that it seemed that my immunity had gradually recovered with age, but my mother didn't want to risk it. She also wanted to shield me from the cruelties of the real world. Of course, there's a lot to blame her for, but should I? By the way, Alex hasn't moved anywhere, and we walk together every day now. I can't stand sitting at home. Do you think your parents overprotect you too? Write your answers in the comments, like and subscribe to our channel.